Hello and welcome to this installment of Vox Machina. As your narrator, I'll be bringing fantastic works of fiction from the page to your eardrums. Uploads will be posted weekly, so be sure to subscribe and hit the alerts bell to be notified when new installments are available. Got a story you think deserves the Vox Machina treatment? Let me know in a comment and you might just hear it in a future episode. Thanks for listening and on with the show. How to Train Your Malfoy by Fencer X. Episode 15. When they popped back into being in the middle of Harry's sitting room, he immediately moved to get Draco settled in the armchair, which he would admit was much more comfortable than the guest sofa. He was considering fetching a blanket when Hermione placed a hand on Harry's arm. Ron? Oh, fuck, he'd nearly forgotten. He's all right. Oh, at least I think he is. He's at St. Mungo's. Molly and Arthur were with him, last I heard. I think he was unconscious, but Arthur seemed to think the healers would be able to put him to rights. We didn't really have time to check on him personally. No, I rather appreciate you coming to find me directly instead of popping by to deliver a get-well-soon bouquet to my husband. She wiped a hand over her face. I should go see him, though. Start planning how we're going to deal with, well, everything. Oh. She palmed the pocket pensive and passed it to Harry. You should hold on to this. It might be all that stands between us and a dank cell in Azkaban. Maybe they'll name a wing after my family, Draco muttered, eyes closed and head resting against the tall, plushly upholstered back of the armchair. Harry pocketed the orb. Yeah, I'll keep it safe. He inclined his head toward the kitchen. I'm gonna pick through my drinks cabinet and see if I can't fix him something strong enough to kill him this time. Would you like anything? Well, if I'm going to get alcohol poisoning, it's a good thing my next stop is a hospital. Sure. I prefer liqueurs if you've got any banging around in there, Draco called after them, and Harry ignored him. Wanker. He didn't go right for the liquor cabinet, though, stopping at the kitchen table to sink into one of the not very comfortable seats to really catch his breath for the first time since they'd been jumped in the garden the previous afternoon. Hermione joined him, letting her head fall forward to rest on the table, cocked to the side so she could see him. She smiled softly. Well, that's 2 for 2 in breaking into the Department of Mysteries and then breaking out of it. Shall we try to make it an annual thing? Get the old gang back together, take turns getting captured and needing rescuing? Harry snorted softly. If it's all the same to you, I think I'd like to go at least another 7 years before we try again. He pushed his glasses up to rub at his eyes. He was remembering now that neither he nor Draco had gotten any proper sleep in the past 24 hours, and it was starting to catch up to him now. At least no one died this time. Hermione's expression fell, her lower lip beginning to quiver, and Harry felt immediately contrite. Before he could apologize for the remark, not having meant it in quite the way she seemed to have taken it, she reached forward to place her hands over his own, whispering, I am so sorry, Harry. I never should have brought him to you. I mean, of course, I don't regret what I did, but... She shook her head. I should have found somewhere else to hide him. Probably should have gone to Kingsley or someone else in the Order. Someone I could trust to do the right thing. Not that I couldn't trust you to do the right thing. She buried her head in her hands. I'm so sorry for getting you caught up in all this. Caught up in all this? Harry poked her gently. You think I'd have any right to complain after all the shit I got you and Ron caught up in over the years? We agreed to be caught up in it, though, she sniffed. And so did I. I'm a grown-ass wizard. I can make my own very bad decisions, thank you very much. And as for whether or not you should have brought him here, of course you should have. Only you also should have brought yourself and Ron along as well. Would have been like hunting Horcruxes all over again, just with a very odd tag-along, and probably better food this time. She gave a wobbling little chuckle, sniffing. Much as I enjoy your company, I recall it being very cramped quarters in that tent, and your cottage isn't any bigger. Can you imagine what a horror Ron would be if he'd had to spend every waking moment the past 2 months around Draco? Or what a horror Draco would have been having to spend every waking moment around Ron? She leaned back in her chair, shaking her head in admiration. I'm shocked you managed it yourself, given your history. Especially now that it seems he's, well, more or less back to normal. She cast a glance back toward the living room, and Harry followed it, but Draco was still dozing in the armchair, it seemed. How long has he been like that? Like what? Like himself? She nodded. Yesterday afternoon. We were out in the garden, though there isn't much of one left now, and we got jumped by a bunch of unspeakables. I guess it was a big enough threat that dragon bits of him finally decided it was time to go all in, and he transformed fully, and then absolutely massacred them. Hermione blanched, and he quickly corrected, exaggeration, but not by much. You should have seen him. He didn't really get to strut his stuff at the ministry, but out here, fields and open air as far as the eye could see. He nodded to himself. I could see why they called them Wizard's Bane. He was fucking terrifying. But don't tell him I said that. She gave him a queer look, one bushy brow arching. Harry Potter, are you fond of him? He straightened. What? I mean, of course. It's not so strange, is it? I've gotten used to him, certainly, and he's not been horrible, which is saying something for him. He's been... He shrugged. Decent, even. Almost nice. But don't tell him I said that either. In fact, I don't think I've heard him utter a single slur since he started talking again, so, He gave a little fist pump. Progress. Right, she drawled, nodding slowly. Well, regardless, I do think you ought to come to St. Mungo's with me to get checked out while I see to Ron. Huh? Oh, right. Actually, now that he considered it, it wasn't a bad idea at all. The potions he'd guzzled at the burrow were starting to wear off, leaving him feeling achy and queasy. Yes, see, you've got a massive bruise just there on your neck. She reached forward and poked a sensitive spot over his jugular where Draco had paid particularly avid attentions earlier. He slapped a hand over the spot, scooting back away from her, and began stammering. I think that was from an unspeakable. I'd say something very unspeakable. She crossed her arms, lips pursed, and flicked her gaze again toward the sitting room to check that Draco wasn't paying them any mind. Please tell me you did at least wait until he could speak again. I know he was very forward with you, but it strikes me as more than a little unethical to... God! Harry hissed, leaning forward. Yes, of course. Give me some credit. We were just... Emotions were, running high after the attack, and... He trailed off, not wanting to get into the particulars with her in the middle of his kitchen. Or anywhere, for that matter. Hermione was smiling, though, a soft little knowing thing that he wasn't sure he liked. That doesn't weird you out? She bobbed her head, scrunching up her features in thought. Yes, but also... No, not really. At Harry's bold confusion, she continued. Just, you two have always had a way about each other. You couldn't not be baited by each other, couldn't not let each other really get under your skin. 6th year you all but stalked him. I did not. He was up to something, yes, so you said. He didn't like her tone. Draco had been up to something, and Ron had very nearly paid the ultimate price for his desperation. But the way you went about it was very... She sighed. Circumspect, we'll say. Like it was your solemn duty to see he made no mischief. You didn't talk to him, you didn't leave it to any of the professors to handle. You made him your business. With everything you had to deal with, you still let him get to you. So, no. She shrugged. It doesn't weird me out. Honestly, it's felt kind of inevitable. Inevitable sounded a lot like fated, and that was getting a bit too much for Harry's already sensitive stomach. I fail to see how my investigating him for attempted murder in any way meant we'd wind up... He pointed at his neck, and Hermione flushed. Oh, I didn't mean it like that. More like... There was always a charged energy between you that was bound to undergo some kind of a reaction. I always thought that once we left school and he got out from under his parents' influence, you might find you actually got along. You've got quite a bit in common, you have to admit. You both like Quidditch, you're both seekers, you both come from money, after a fashion, and... She frowned to herself. All right, maybe that's it. The point is, you felt more strongly about him than about pretty much anyone else in that school, and he went out of his way to make your life in particular a living hell. I'm not saying you were made for each other, but there were clearly some issues that needed resolving, and well, I suppose this was one way to go about it. Harry groaned. He doesn't even like me. He said as much, and honestly, I'm inclined to believe him. Hermione cleared her throat delicately. Liking someone isn't always a prerequisite for, well, And in his particular case, I suspect that his animagus form's overwhelming instincts turned the very complicated feelings he had for you into very simple ones. And now that he's back to himself, he has to figure out how to complicate those feelings again, or if he even wants to. But those feelings were always there, Harry. He didn't lose his memory or gain any new ones through this whole fiasco. He just learned a few perhaps uncomfortable truths about himself. She twisted her lips into a wry grin. And unfortunately for you, though, you can't just turn into an animal to uncomplicate your feelings. Those you'll have to figure out on your own. Yeah, Harry had been afraid of that. He let his forehead fall against the table, taking a deep breath and releasing it slowly while Hermione patted him gently on the back. From the sitting room, Draco called with a waspish tone, "Are you two quite done talking about me, or shall I go take a turn about what's left of the garden and see if Tom's left us any tomatoes?" Foregoing the drink after all, Hermione headed off to St. Mungo's to check on Ron, though not before leaving Harry with a tight hug and, after a moment's consideration, Draco with an even tighter one. Draco froze at first, but when it became obvious she wasn't going to let go until he returned it, he gingerly patted her back, grumbling, "Unhand me, or I'll tell Weasley you did this." She rolled her eyes. "You already escaped death once today, so keen to try it again, are we?" She then waved her fingers at Harry. "I'll send a Patronus once I've got word on Ron's condition. I noticed the wards were down outside too, so reset them when you can, all right? And stay put until you hear from me or Ron. I'm still not 100% sure how the Unspeakables found you all the way out here, since I'm sure Ron would never have given you up, so there's a non-zero chance you might find yourselves facing another strike team if 005's able to talk her way out of Aura custody quickly enough." Harry bid her farewell, Draco pointedly did not, and then she disappeared with a bright crack, and it was just the two of them once more. Outside, over the rolling hills surrounding Harry's cottage, the sun was beginning to rise. The past 24 hours had felt like 24 years, and there was nothing Harry wanted to do more right now than to stumble into his room, face-plant onto his bed, and not wake up until he had to either eat or piss or both. But sleep was a luxury he couldn't yet allow himself, not before he had a very uncomfortable but necessary conversation with his erstwhile house-guest and occasional wanking partner. "It's not very polite to eavesdrop on people, you know," Harry said, turning to Draco, who was presently curled up in his armchair and nursing the tumbler of dishes, unfortunately the only spirit on hand, that Harry had poured for him. "It's also not very polite to talk about people behind their backs." Draco fixed Harry with a pointed look. "Any other witty hypocrisies you'd like to drop in my lap?" "I wasn't talking behind your back." "Well, you certainly weren't doing it to my face." Harry sighed and settled onto the couch, leaning forward to rest his elbows on his knees. "Fine, then I'll talk to your face." Draco sank back into the armchair, losing his edge, and let his gaze wander away from the conversation. It seemed he wanted to have it about as much as Harry. Too fucking bad for the both of them. "I thought you'd died." Draco's attention snapped back to Harry, grey eyes wide and searching. "I saw that curse hit you, hit the dragon, and all I could think was, the one thing I'm supposed to be good at is saving people, and you were somewhere you weren't meant to be, taking that curse, because of me. The last time I broke into the Department of Mysteries, someone I loved died, and it was because of me that time too. So all I could think was, fuck, not again." He wiped a hand over his face. "I'm just really, really fucking tired of getting attached to people and then having them taken away from me." There was a long beat of silence, and then Draco said in a forcibly superior voice, "So don't get attached. Problem solved." Harry locked eyes with him. "You first." "Unlike some people in this conversation, I can assure you I have no problem separating my wants from my needs." "Yeah? Then what the hell were you doing in the ministry? Paying back Hermione for busting you out in the first place? Sounds like a reasonable explanation for an otherwise uncharacteristic act to me." And then he squared his shoulders and threw one leg over the other. "See, I know what you're thinking." Harry waited to be regaled. It would certainly be news to him. "You think I've undergone, not a change of heart, because you probably don't think I have one, but
Some wild transformation, and I don't mean the animagus one. You think some bit of you has rubbed off on me, and not in the fun way, over the past few months as you mollycoddled me back to good health while I searched for my lost gobstones, such that now I'm a new man, a better man. Better than that shit stain you went to school with, right? I don't have mummy and daddy telling me what to think and who to consort with anymore. I'm wearing Weasley jumpers and Cannon's tees. Why, I even hugged Granger. He leaned forward, uncrossing his legs and lacing his fingers together. I recognize you don't subscribe to the Prophet these days, so I'll give you a newsflash, just for free, because I'm feeling generous. I am not a different person. I'm presently a victim of circumstances, and very soon the trauma will fade, and I'll go back to being the bitter little pissant who drove you mad and called your friends names and stamped on your face such that, yes, my dear Potter, your nose did mend crooked. Harry reflexively felt the bridge of his nose and hated himself for it. Listen to me all you like. It's still going to be the same damn song. Harry waited until it sounded like he'd said his piece, and then it was his turn. And what about me? Draco narrowed his eyes. What about you? Have I changed at all? Am I still the same self-aggrandizing, pretentious prick you went to school with? Is there nothing about me you find at all interesting, we'll say? It was a safe choice of words, he felt. Because I think I've changed. In lots of ways. Some you haven't even seen yet. All you know is Ari. You don't know me. Not from a few scout weeks sharing space. And maybe you don't want to get to know me. It's a chore revising your image of someone, especially after this much time. But I can say with a fairly strong sense of certainty that Hogwarts you would never have put me on my back and rubbed off on me until he messed his pants. Draco's expression warred between gobsmacked shame and a superior sneer. No? Think you know Hogwarts me so well, do you? I can't say I would have been anywhere near the gentleman I was last night, but I might have given you a turn if you'd offered. No, Harry said firmly. I do know. You never would have. Ever. And Draco shifted uncomfortably in the face of Harry's rock-solid conviction, but he quickly rallied. I fail to see the point of this exercise. The point is that you can claim nothing's changed, that I shouldn't expect some revolutionary shift in our relationship just because we had a nice little wank together, and I don't expect some revolutionary shift in our relationship because of that. I expect it because it's already happened. And Draco gave him the nastiest look, but Harry pressed on. You do like me, and you hate that you do, almost as much as you hate that I might like you back. He leaned in. How likable you are has no bearing on how much I like you. I'm sorry to have to inform you. Draco was breathing very loudly by this point, and he looked furious. Good. He tended to let the truth slip out when he got emotional. And I'm sorry to have to inform you that you liking me has no bearing on me liking you. I'd have thought the past 11 years, or at least the pertinent 7, might have taught you as much. You don't know me. You don't know a damn thing about me. And then Harry heard himself, his own words echoing behind Draco's. I'm just really fucking tired of getting attached to people and then having them taken away from me. Maybe Hermione was right. Maybe they did have a lot in common. Harry glanced around the sitting room. What's today's date? Draco blinked very loudly. What? Harry moved to the little side table next to the armchair, rifling through its drawer looking for his scheduling book, which he found and then began flipping through. The 27th of August. He snapped the book shut again, tossing it back into the drawer. 1 year. Draco continued to boggle, then narrowed his gaze in suspicion. Fuck, we need to get you to St. Mungo's. What are we doing here? Come on. He leapt to his feet, grabbing Harry roughly by the bicep, and began to turn in place. Harry snatched his arm from Draco's grasp, though. You think that once you've caught your breath and the excitement has died down, everything you've experienced these past few months will wash off and you'll go back to being the person you were before, such that I'll find you just as horrid now as I did back in school. Me? I think that won't happen. So, I'll give you a year. He crossed his arms over his chest, and we'll come back here next August 27th and see if it's true. See if you really don't like me and never could, and if the person I thought I fancied ever even existed. That way we'll both be safe. No attachments." Draco recoiled, stepping around to place the armchair between them as if he thought Harry's ridiculousness was infectious. "Don't be absurd. I'm not going to sit around with my thumbs up my arse waiting for you. And I'm not saying you should. I will, because honestly I've got no better prospects at the moment, and some recent incidents have gotten me curious about the concept of fingers of bastards. But I'm not saying you have to. I'm just asking you to come back here, August the 27th, 2003, and tell me I was wrong. I mean, if nothing else, it ought to be worth the trip for that alone. You like telling me I was wrong about things." And Draco pursed his lips, but did not immediately shoot down the idea, which Harry thought was progress. After a long beat, he said, "I don't like muggles." "All right." "They're silly at best and dangerous at worst, and nothing good has ever come from wizards fraternizing with them." Oh, were they going to have this conversation now? Harry would have rather gone back for round 2 with the last one, honestly. He released a long, frustrated sigh. "Except it was a Muggleborn who rescued you from the deepest, darkest pit known to wizarding kind. After another one put me there." "Can you blame them?" Harry said, a bit too pithily, and Draco's face went white with rage, a vein standing out in his temple. "Are you suggesting I deserved?" "Fuck no, of course not." He refused to let Draco's anger begin building until they either or both said something they would regret. They'd come too far to undo it all in a moment of incensed emotion. "I am suggesting, though, that hating someone only leads to more hate. Pain to more pain. It's got to stop somewhere." He stepped closer, keeping the back of the armchair between them as Draco treated it like a security blanket. "I'm not saying you've got to become Muggle lover number 1, but maybe it doesn't have to be your whole personality." Draco's lip curled. "It's not my whole personality. It was like 90% of your personality at school." "At school. Maybe now," he shrugged, "you just focus on the other 10% for a while." He forced Draco's eyes to meet his own, instead of letting them wander the room as they were wont to do when Harry was winning an argument. "You said I don't know you. I think you don't know yourself. You haven't gotten to be Draco Malfoy in 4 years now. You think you haven't changed. I think you have. A bit, at least. Maybe just take some time to do a little soul-searching." Draco sank back down into the armchair in an elegant heap. "A year, was it?" Harry leaned over the back, poking the little whirl on the top of Draco's head. "If that's what you need." Draco's shoulders relaxed just a tick. Harry wasn't sure what that meant. He tilted his head up, frowning at Harry. "And if I find I'm still me?" Harry sighed, collapsing over the back of the chair. "You'll always be you. There's no still about it. You're as much you now as Malfoy was you, and you at Hogwarts was you." Says the man whose first words to me after my mind got unscrambled were, "Are you you or are you him?" Harry propped his head up in his palm, elbow resting along the chair back. He poked at the whirl of hair again, and this time Draco caught his finger, tightening his grip in threat. "Hallucinations from massive blood loss. I'm feeling much better now." Harry pulled his finger back. "I just think you'll find there's more signs to you than you might have thought." He straightened. "And speaking of which..." Draco twisted around to watch him leave the room, heading for the bedroom, and the little box he'd hidden on the top shelf of his wardrobe. He pulled the box out, setting it on his bed, and removed the lid as Draco came up behind him, craning his head to see what he was getting into. Harry lifted the bowl ever so carefully and held it out for Draco to take, but he recoiled, taking a step back and glaring at the thing as if it meant to do him grievous harm. "What the hell is that?" "A pensive," Harry said. "I know a fucking pensive when I see one. I asked, what the hell is that?" He leaned over to peek inside the box, perhaps searching for an instruction manual or gift card. "Where did you get it?" Harry swallowed. "Malfoy Manor." Draco's eyes snapped to Harry's. "What the hell are you doing with a pensive from Malfoy Manor?" Harry could see him searching, just behind those sharp grey eyes, for any recollection of having owned a pensive himself and coming up empty. He probably thought it belonged to his parents. I was collecting it to return to its owner. He held it out to Draco again. It's yours. Draco shook his head. I don't own a pensive. That's not mine. It is. You only don't remember it. Harry looked down at it, admiring the simple, clean lines. It didn't look like something Draco Malfoy would own, admittedly. I will confess, I had a peek at the memories inside it. I thought they might help bring you back to your senses, that maybe there was something in here that might constitute a sufficient jolt your humanity would just slip back to the forefront and everything would be set right. Draco still hung back, giving Harry a healthy berth. And? Harry sighed, shaking his head. No, not really. But they're still your memories. You ought to at least be allowed to decide if you want to have them back or not. Why would I want them back? Pensives are for storing memories you've got, not ones you haven't got. I've never owned a pensive in my life. You did, though. Mimsy told me you asked her to hide it for you. Draco mouthed Mimsy to himself, frowning. And then you made it so you forgot you'd done so. What? Why would I? And Draco's confusion, writ keenly over his features, was stained with a hint of worry now. Why would I do that? I don't know, Harry said, and it must not have been very convincingly, for Draco cut him a sharp glare. Bullshit you don't know. Tell me. I don't. Genuinely, I don't know. But you think you do. You're giving me them back now. Why? Harry hedged. Because they're your memories. You should be in charge of your own mind, and whether that involves accepting these memories or rejecting them should be up to you too. Draco stared at the pensive for a long moment, then shook his head. No, I don't want them. Clearly I didn't think I needed them if I ripped them out and had a house elf hide them from me. Or, Harry countered, wanting to ensure Draco made as informed a decision as possible, maybe they meant so much to you you didn't want to risk being caught with them. Draco's gaze narrowed. Caught with them? When did I create this pensive? He took a step closer, eyeing Harry suspiciously. Do you want me to have them back? I want you to be you. Whatever version of you it is that you feel most comfortable with. If you think you shouldn't have these memories, then that's all right. And if you think you should have them back, then that's all right too. Even if it changes who I am. Harry wanted to bang his head against one of his bedposts. I told you. You'll always be you. There are immutable parts of ourselves that just are. Things that are ingrained within us, that split personalities and memory laws can't change. I genuinely do not believe that these memories will change who you are. Draco studied Harry carefully, then drew back. And I don't want them. You don't? Harry had to admit he hadn't been expecting that decision after his little speech. Draco crossed his arms. So you do want me to have them? Why? No, just, I thought you would. Want them, I mean. He set the pensive back down in its box, fidgeting with the lid. I thought you wouldn't be able to stand not knowing what was in them. What is in them, then? I don't want to tell you. It should be your decision. Draco rolled his eyes. And so it shall, as soon as you tell me what's in the memories. Harry rolled his eyes right back. Like you said, you removed them for a reason. Telling you what's in them before you decide if you want them or not defeats the purpose. They're my fucking memories that you spied on quite without my permission. To try and help sort you out. God, I know I shouldn't have looked. Believe me, if I could unsee what was in those memories, I would. I felt terrible watching... Felt terrible watching what? Draco rounded on him, backing Harry up against the wardrobe. If they're so horrible, whatever's in those memories, I deserve to know before I inflict them upon myself. I'm gathering from context and your absurd reaction they're from the depths of the war. Did I kill someone? Did I kill someone you love? He took a shuddering breath. Did I kill someone I love? God, Draco was going to convince himself of every horrible potentiality his vivid imagination could possibly concoct if Harry didn't say something. He sighed, exhaling loudly. That you figuring some things out about yourself. And you didn't really seem to like it. You might He grimaced. You might be embarrassed. Not because you ought to be, mind, but, well, because most people don't like to see themselves being vulnerable, and I expect you're no exception. Draco drew back, frowning at himself and blinking as he processed Harry's words. Then he shook his head. No, I'm not. He stepped away, standing in the doorway, and braced a hand on the jamb. Harry's lips tightened into a thin line. He shouldn't have said anything. What do you want me to do with them, then? I don't think you can actually destroy thoughts. I expect it's why you had Mimsy hide them in the first place, so I can't get rid of them, but he could put them back, he supposed, though he didn't relish the idea of another romp through the Malfoy family mausoleum in the middle of summer. I don't care. I don't want them. He made a fist. I don't need them. I feel perfectly myself without them. And if they're as horrible as you make them out to be, I'm sorry, honest I am. I didn't mean it like that. It's just, they're private. They're yours. And I shouldn't have... But Draco was waving him off dismissively. I don't care. I don't. I obviously put them away for what I'm sure were at the time sound reasons, and I've made it this far in life without them, so clearly they weren't all that important in the long run. He swallowed, throat bobbing, and ducked his head. And you've seen them, so... He leaned against the jamb. So at least you'll remember them. You'll know what's in them. In case I ever get the daft idea I want to see them. He lifted his eyes to Harry. Will you hold on to them for me? Just in case. Harry placed the lid back on the box, then returned the pensive to the top shelf of his wardrobe. He settled his hand at the small of Draco's back and guided him back into the sitting room. Of course. That's what saviors do.